Welcome to Skwidvids, I'm Robert, and I'm going to show you how to change the oil on your motorcycle. There's probably like 100 or more videos on how to do this already, but I need to do it on both bikes anyway, and I have a camera, so here we go. Here's what we're going to need. Engine oil, a funnel, torque wrench, socket wrench, gloves, oil drain pan, and rags. It's recommended that you let the motorcycle run for a couple of minutes before draining your oil because you're going to circulate the oil, and it's also going to get the oil more viscous. So when you drain it, more of it's going to come out. So that's already been done on this bike. I'm going to go ahead and set the stage. I like to use these pee pads that you can get for dogs to set underneath in case there's going to be any oil splashing, and there almost always is. This bike uses a 17mm socket. So we're going to go down to the drain bolt. Make sure this is the right direction. Crack it loose. Once it's cracked loose, you can do the rest by hand. I like to put upward pressure as I'm unscrewing it so that way you can remove the drain bolt quickly without making a lot of a mess. I'm still going to do that anyway. Fail. There we go. I'm now going to lift the bike off the side stand. Try to get as much oil as we can out. So if you want, you can let it sit for a few minutes, 5-10 minutes. Get as much oil as you can out of there. I change the oil pretty frequently, every few track days or so. So I'm not too worried about a little extra. So once this little stream stops or slows down to drips, I'm going to put the plug back in. So the oil has slowed down to a drip, so we're going to put the drain plug back in, but before we do, we're going to replace the washer that's on this bolt here. There's a washer, and sometimes it gets stuck on the inside depending on the type of bike you have, so you'll have to check. If you don't have a washer or you don't see one on your bolt, that means it's stuck inside of the bike and you'll have to pry that out. If it's a crush washer, you'll probably want to swap that out every time. Actually, it's recommended to swap it out every time, so I'm just going to say do that. All right, here's the old washer. See if the camera can pick that up. As you can see, it's pretty well flattened compared to the new one, which has some ridges on it. So this one looks like it might be directional. Can the camera see that? So however it came off is how I'm going to put it back on. Okay, I slipped a new one on. We're going to go ahead and reinsert this into the bike now that it's slowed down. This is a lot easier to do when you're not worried about blocking the shot. We're going to go hand tight first, then get our socket wrench, give it a little ugga, just one ugga. Now we're going to check the torque specs for that because you don't want to over tighten it. If you do and you strip the threads on the bottom of that, you're screwed. You're going to have to buy a new oil pan. So don't do that. The manual says it's 43 Newton meters, which, not going to lie, that seems really high. So I think we're going to start at 40. I don't know if you can see that, but we're going to start at 40 Newton meters. And even that might be a bit too high. Let's find out. Holy crap, that's a lot of torque, but that's what the manual says. Okay, now we're on the other side of the bike where the oil filter is at, and lucky for me, these headers are configured in a way that allow me to take off the oil filter without worrying about oil spilling all over the headers. A lot of times, with aftermarket headers especially, they'll be routed straight back, and so you'll have to find a way to either cover up the headers. I use aluminum foil, or you could just clean them up afterwards, but in this case, they're routed in a way that's really easy and allows me to take off the oil filter without worrying about it. There's a couple different ways that you can take off an oil filter. There are tools specifically for that. Some people, like myself, get real ghetto and just stick a screwdriver through it and then wrench it out of there. But I happen to have this handy dandy tool, so this should make light work of it. Shouldn't be on there too tight. and it is not. Spin the rest out by hand. There you go. All right, that's off, and it's just about done draining. And as far as the replacement, I like to go for the OE filter replacement. All right, so that's just about done. Now we can replace it with the new one. I like to use the OEM oil filters. There's a couple different options out there, but I just prefer to run these. If you race, you have to run OEM for a lot of organizations, but I do it just because. Before mounting the new one, I like to clean the area that the filter will come in contact with my rag first. And there's always the talk about whether or not you should lubricate the seal before putting the new one on. I always have, but I don't really know that it matters that much if you're swapping them out as often as I do. This one actually already comes with what looks like some sort of lubricant around it. So we're gonna skip the oil and then mount her up. I spit it on, and then I always only ever go hand tight. Anything more than hand tight is probably too tight. All right, now we're gonna replace the oil that we just drained. And as far as the type of oil I use, I'm not too picky on the Yamaha. Sorry, Yamaha. Because I swap oil often enough to where I really don't think it matters. This is also a light duty track bike, so I'm not really wringing its neck. I don't really think it matters that much, but I do like to use full synthetic at the very least. The manual calls for 2.8 quarts of 1040 weight oil. So I got my 1040 full synthetic, and we are going to pour in 2 and whatever 0.8 of a quart is. Okay, we're probably right around 2.5 quarts, give or take. So what I'm gonna do is close this back up. I'm gonna run the motorcycle. I'm gonna check the sight window. All right, so as you can see, there's the sight window. I started the motorcycle, I let it run for a couple minutes. And we're gonna check. Wonder if I can zoom in. There we go. So as you lift the bike up off the side stand to check your oil level, you wanna make sure it's as balanced as possible in the center, because if it's off, as you can see, either direction just a little bit can make a difference. So we are about dead center right there, and we are right in between the two hash marks that show me that's perfect. Okay, FZ is done. Now that we're done with the oil, I'm gonna pour the used stuff back into these containers, and I'm gonna take them to my nearest auto parts store for recycling. Do this step very carefully. All right, we are moving on to the RS660. I already removed the belly pan and I inspected it. And while I was underneath here, I noticed there was a little bit of oil on the oil pan itself. So I checked these little bolts here, and I noticed the one on the far side over there was loose, and that was the source of the problem. So while you're underneath your bike and you're draining your oil, good opportunity to take a look at all the bolts, make sure they're snug before you move on to draining your oil. So just like the FZ, the headers are routed in a way that'll allow me to remove the oil filter without much of a mess. I already replaced this oil filter about 2 track days ago, so I'm gonna go ahead and skip that, but I am gonna still replace the oil. And as you can see here, I have safety wire around it because this is the race bike and it is required. So that's pretty easy. We're gonna go ahead and snip that safety wire and then go through the exact same process. I forgot what size the OEM drain bolt is on this, but this is an aftermarket drain bolt. I got it pre-drilled. I think it was from Lightweight Racer, I forgot. I'll leave a link down below. It's titanium magnetic pre-drilled. Useless if you're not racing, awesome if you are. So just like the FZ, we're gonna crack this thing loose, spin the rest by hand. Keeping upward pressure, hopefully it doesn't spill out too much before I can remove the drain bolt. And there we go. Now what's cool about magnetic drain plugs is that you can always tell if you've got any metal shavings on the tip of it. Pretty normal. It's not uncommon to see a little bit of metal shavings, especially on a new bike. And this one is still pretty new to me anyway. So before you reinstall it, you want to wipe it down, clean it back up. I don't have a side stand on this bike, so I have to put it on the rear stand. If you do have the means to put your bike on a rear stand, it makes it a lot easier. Then you don't have to tip it side to side. And when you fill it up, you don't have to tip it either to check to make sure that you're level. Looks like it's slowed down to a drip, so I'm gonna go ahead and reinstall the drain plug. I've cleaned it up. And I think since I just installed this washer like 2 track days ago, I'm gonna reuse it. Shouldn't be any issues with that. It's not a crush washer type. So we will reinstall. Please don't fall in the oil pan. Sweet. And unlike the FZ, this uses only 20 Newton meters of torque, according to the manual. So we have our torque wrench. It's already set. That's not very much at all, but it's going to be safety wired, so we're good. And then take a rag and clean up any excess oil so you can monitor for oil leaks. Unlike the FZ, I'm really particular about the type of oil I use in this bike. It's an Italian race machine, so I like to use organic extra virgin olive oil. Kidding, obviously. The oil I like to use is from Motul. It's called 300V. You might have heard of it. The stuff's not cheap, so if you're not racing, it's probably overkill. They have a 7100, which is better for the occasional track rider or just the street rider because it has more detergents. I replace my oil after every race or after every 2 track days. So for me, I'm not super concerned about the detergents and stuff like that. What I want is the highest performing oil that I can get and the best protection I can get while I'm racing. So according to the manual, it requires 2,800 cc's. I have no idea how much that is, but I did some math. Just kidding, I looked it up on Google. It's nearly 3 quarts. So the cool thing about this bottle is it has a window on the side so you know exactly how much you used. All right, so now time to check the oil level. I made the mistake of screwing it in there. The manual says not to screw it in. Damn it. This dipstick sucks. It's really hard to read. There is a line there. I don't know if it shows. There's a line there in the center that tells you if you're full, empty. I think we're about where we should be. Sweet. Okay, that's it. We're all done. Really easy job. It takes about 20 minutes when I'm not recording. When I am, it takes like 2 hours. So with that being said, if you found this mildly helpful, please give it a like or let me know in the comments, or do both. Actually, do both. You could save yourself a bunch of dough by doing these things yourself. Most of this stuff can be intimidating if you've never turned a wrench before. There are a lot of people out there who have motorcycles and you have to take them to the shop for the most basic maintenance. I'm going to do a basic maintenance series, and that was by request. There's a bunch of videos out there already, people covering topics I'm going to cover, but it was requested, so I'm going to do it. Why not? I have a camera, I have the means to do it, and as I need to do basic maintenance on this motorcycle or the FZ, I will record it and upload some videos. Just let me know that it helps you guys, because if it's not helpful, I'm not going to waste my time with it. That being said, thanks so much for watching. There'll be more videos to come soon, and if there's anything you want to see in the future, let me know in the comments.